Are
Hi.
we? Hi. Hi, everyone. We're live.
We are live.
We're live and alive. Hi. Hi. I'm Virginia Stanley,
I'm Lainey Mays.
And I'm Grace Caternolo.
and we're the library marketing team for HarperCollins Publishers, otherwise known as Library Love Fest. Here with another episode. Geez, second to last of the year of Writers to Watch. How did that happen? Crazy year. Crazy year.
Crazy.
By
Oh,
fast, very
but
fast.
very fast.
I felt like September really drug out, like kept going, and then all of a sudden I'm like, it's Christmas. It's weird.
Yeah, I know it. But hey, listen, as my beloved Malachi McCourt used to say, every day above ground is a good one, and we're all above ground, so it's a good one.
Hallelujah.
We have four wonderful authors who'll be talking with us today, and you know how it goes. Each one comes on for about 5 minutes, more or less, talks about their forthcoming book. And then when they're all done, um, we'll bring them all on and you can ask your questions and, just type them into the chat and, we'll get to probably all of them. We almost always get to all of them. So, we're on Facebook, we're on Crowdcast. So wherever you're watching us, that's where we are. How, how eloquent. Uh, Lady Grace, is there anything we want to say before we bring our lovely authors on?
I think so. We're just very excited we already did some chatting beforehand. I know we have some cool things to share, so I'm excited.
Sweet. All right. So I know sometimes, folks have to head off before we wrap up, which will be within the hour. But if you have to go and we don't get to say goodbye, just wishing you all a wonderful, healthy, peaceful, loving Thanksgiving, however you celebrate it and whoever you celebrate it with. And we're very thankful to all of you for all of your support of our authors, our books, and our team, and what we try to do to get the word out about the books. But it doesn't happen without the authors, and it certainly doesn't happen without all of you. So librarians, we love you and we thank you so much for everything that you're always here. You're always supportive. And we're really happy to bring these authors to you tonight. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Grace Caternello.
Yes, thank you so much, V. I'm very excited to introduce our first author, Alison Gaylin. So, Alison, you can come on screen.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm so excited you're here. You have written such an unsettling book, and I mean that in the best way. It gives me so much to think about. We're going to be talking today about We Are Watching, on sale January 28th. So very, very soon people can get their hands on this one. And after we talk about it, they will want to. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then pass it off to you. And I'm very sorry if you can hear sirens going by. I live in Brooklyn. So Alison is the USA Today and international best-selling author of 13 books, including the standalones The Collective and If I Die Tonight, which was the winner of the Edgar Award, and the Brenna Spector series, and she was the winner of the Seamus Award. Into the Dark and Stay With Me. Nominated for the Edgar 4 times, she has been a finalist for a numerous amount of awards, including the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, the Strand Book Award, and the ITW Thriller, McCavity, and Anthony Awards. And she lives with her husband in Woodstock. So, Alison, thank you for being here. We're very excited to have you. And without further ado, tell everybody about We Are Watching.
Okay, that was a lovely little, sorry, little musical introduction there. Thank you so much for having me, and it's just such an honor and a real privilege to be talking to librarians. I've loved libraries since I was young, and I'm really just so happy to be here. The fact that you said the book was unsettling is a huge compliment because that's really what I was aiming for. I've long loved the novels of Ira Levin, and I think it's probably, Rosemary's Baby and also the Stepford Wives. And that's probably the vibe that's closest to this particular novel that I wrote. It's a lot more timely than I wanted it to be, but it is about a normal family. What happens to a normal family when they're targeted by violent online conspiracy theorists? It was scary for me to write. I hope it's scary to read. The action centers around a family, mostly a mother and daughter, who live in an upstate New York town called Elizabethville. The mother, Meg, owns a bookstore with her husband, Justin. Their daughter, Lily, is off to college in Ithaca to study music. She's a real music prodigy. She plays the bass. They're driving up to college in the first chapter when something terrible and tragic happens that you have to read to find out. But is it just an accident, or does it tie in to a decades-long conspiracy that has been dogging Meg's family, including her father, Nathan Lerner, who was the basis for a progressive rock group back in the 70s and 80s, and the subject of rumors of Satanism, which weren't true, but that doesn't matter to people who make up rumors. So, unknowing to Meg and to her daughter, there has been talk that has been snowballing with the help of the internet over the years. And it all comes to a head in the 3 days during which this book takes place, when the conspiracy theorists see doomsday coming, and violent death of the family is the only answer. And Meg is just discovering this as the book begins. So it's told through the point of view of Meg Russo, her daughter Lily, and her father Nathan, who is very reclusive and eccentric and lives in the Catskills, and has been very paranoid, seemingly unjustly paranoid, unreasonably paranoid his whole life. But those paranoias turn out to be real. So I hope people enjoy this book. I really think it's my scariest book, and I've written some scary books. So I'm hoping that people enjoy it and find it an escape, in that they look at the world around us and think, wow, this is even worse. At least this isn't happening to me. So that's basically my description.
Thank you so much. I wanted to read a quote by Megan Abbott, New York Times bestselling author, about We Are Watching. She says, Gaylin expertly mines our cultural moment, a masterful follow-up to The Collective. It's harrowing, haunting, and an exploration of perilous lure of conspiracy thinking and the dangerous power of false belief. And I think, like I said, I was very unsettled. I like when a book makes me really feel something, and I was deeply uncomfortable, and I mean that in the best way. So thank you so much. And I will pass it off to Virginia.
Okay. Thank you, Alison. And now I'm going to bring in Lynn Steger Strong.
I'm in.
Hello. Oh,
Hi.
so much to talk about. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Thanks
I'm
for having
good.
me.
Yes. We've this book is literally from cover to cover, and everything in between is really so compelling and haunting and beautiful. And we'll talk about that jacket later. Hello. So great. Okay. I'm going to do a brief introduction of you, Lynn, and then I'm going to pass it over to you to tell us about your new book, The Float Test. Lynn Steger Strong is the author of the novels Flight, Want, and Hold Still. Her nonfiction has appeared in the New York Times, the LA Times, the Paris Review, the New Yorker, and New York Magazine, among others, many others. And she teaches writing at Princeton and Columbia University. Her forthcoming novel, The Float Test, which goes on sale in April of 2025, is a sophisticated and layered story about sisters, betrayal, love, and Florida, which we'll get into later as well. This is a story about a family fraught with secrets. I'll say no more, but I'll turn it over to you to tell librarians, listeners, what you want them to know about the float test.
Oh, thank you, Virginia, and thanks, librarians, for coming. I think, like Allison said, and maybe all writers feel this way, but librarians hold a special place in our hearts, and then maybe even more so when your kids fall in love with them too. So I'm so glad to be here. The germ for the float test is sort of specific in terms of, we a few years ago during COVID, we found ourselves, my husband and family and I, in the town where both of us grew up. And when we realized we had to go there, it felt pretty terrible because we went there under hard circumstances and we moved into the 2-bedroom, 1-bath house of my in-laws. And then in that sort of magic way that I think life does, it turned out pretty wonderful. And so I think that, a lot of what I was interested in the book was how the people in the places that we think we know the best, when we let them surprise us, might be the things that teach us the most, both about ourselves and also maybe about our ability to change. And so maybe another way to think about it too was I'm always interested in ambivalence. And there's maybe no place I am as angry at as Florida, but there's also no place I love as much. So I think writing a book where I tried to navigate a deep, deep love, um, and also confusion and anger and all of those things, it felt like the hardest book and also the truest book. More brass tacks stuff with regard to what happens. It's 4 siblings. Each of them are in crisis. We've got Jen, who has too many kids and isn't sure she remembers how to be nice to them. Fred, who's a writer who isn't sure she wants to write anymore. And sweet baby George, who is a grown up, but he's maybe not sure how. And now he's lost his wife. The 4th sibling is the narrator, who is not the writer, which was one of the things I was really interested in, is giving the power to the person who is not the writer and see what happens when she takes the wheel. And Jude has also in crisis, but in a way that feels really true to me, maybe about writers, but I gave it to Jude, is that she takes a really long time to tell us about her crisis because she's so focused on trying to figure out why her favorite sister has broken her heart. And so, yeah, I think another way to think about it, and then I'll hand it back over to Virginia, is one of my, there's always a point where my close friend reads the book and she said, your North Star on this one is that it's a sister love story. And I do think that is what it's about. It's about sort of betrayal and loss and not being able to see each other clearly through all the different versions of yourselves, and then maybe finding a way to love each other as grown-ups on your own terms. That's what I got.
That's a great North Star. That's a great friend, because that's yeah, everybody's got that, or everybody can relate to that, even if they don't have a sister relationship. If it's doesn't have to be that, but that's what it is in this case. And I want to talk to you more about the siblings and what well, I don't want to give too much away, but it's so fraught. So before we then, and thank you, that was a great synopsis, and it's like, the bait's on the hook, and it's like it's just being pulled through the water. It's pretty cool. I just want to read this really neat quote from Xochitl Gonzalez. She was a New York Times bestselling author of Anita DeMonte Laughs Last. She says, with surgical precision, Lynn Steger Strong dissects and then elegantly reconstructs an American family on the brink of falling apart, of finding themselves, of saying all the things left unsaid. Strong's clear and confident voice and prose makes the unvarnished truths in this book sting. The float test will stay with me for a long time to come. And wow, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that's going to be the sentiment shared by many after they read this. So Lynn, thanks so much. And then we'll move on to Brian. So we'll ask Lynn and Allison to turn off their cameras, and then we'll bring Brian on. Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going. How are you?
as good as I can be, I guess, given the circumstances. Thanks so much for
Yes.
having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. This is great. And boy, this book, your book has just been buzzed about. All of these books have been buzzed about by our in-house people. So it's pretty neat to have you all here to buzz about them some more ourselves. So Brian, I'm going to do a quick intro of you to give people a little background, and then let's have you talk about the book for a few minutes and let people know what you want them to know about the Californians. Brian Castleberry's first novel, Nine Shiny Objects, was a New York Times Editor's Choice selection and was long listed for the PEN/Faulkner Award. His other work has been published in the Southern Review, Narrative, Lit Hub, the LA Review of Books, Los Angeles Review of Books, and elsewhere. His forthcoming book, The Californians, which comes out in March of 2025, is a daring novel that spans 100 years of American history, from the early days of cinema to the rise of NFTs, about parents and children, the drive to create even in times of crisis, and the inheritance of grand Western dreams. That's a lot, and I'm going to turn it over to you to talk some more about the Californians.
Thanks so much, Virginia. Yeah, similar to Lynn, I got started on this book during COVID and all those changes that we were all going through. My first book came out in the summer of 2020, and so I was kind of in this multiple crises of, we're all stuck at home. I didn't know where my work was going, in a sense. I'd finally gotten my first book published, and the world kind of ended. And it got me thinking a lot about why we make art. And how it is we turn to art in times of kind of crisis or chaos. And that got me down this road of considering these main characters, one of which is Klaus von Stiegel, who is a silent film director who rises to prominence just before sound comes in, and then has to deal with all the aftermath of problems that he caused, solutions he tries to come up with for the various mistakes he's made in his career. And then his granddaughter, Diane Stiegel, who everybody calls Di, as in Princess Di, who is a painter who rises to prominence in the 1980s New York art scene. And the third main character is Toby Harlan, an art thief, I guess we could say, a character kind of suffering from millennial malaise in a way. And really the book starts with him, actually. He's our first main character as he's trying to escape a town that's burning in Northern California. And his story kind of begins unraveling the other stories because all these characters are related. And really, I guess one of the things I got thinking as I was working on the book is how that generations kind of hand off not only trauma, which definitely happens here between these characters, but also their dreams and how that kind of infects and moves down from generation to generation. It's also a book about art, about finding your family, finding yourself, and really about changes in America over that long century that it spans. Hopefully that covers enough of it for now, I guess.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's there are great characters in the book, and the history and the connections between them really neat, and how obviously changes over 100 years are many. I'm going to read this quick quote from fellow Writers to Watch author here, Lynn Steger Strong, author of the forthcoming novel, The Flow Test. Okay, so Lynn says, immersive, expansive, century-spanning, and deeply felt, Brian Castleberry's The Californians takes you on a ride through 3 generations of artists, capitalists, patsies, dreamers, cheats, Californians. It's a book that entertains and excites, a story of movies, of yearning, of how and why we make art, and how and why money both propels and traps, seduces and destroys. a story of failures and legacies passed down, a total pleasure of a book. So that is one of many wonderful reviews of your book, but this is by Lynn Steger Strong, who just spoke. And so I think that's really wonderful that, you know,
Yeah,
you
that's amazing.
both together
Thank you, Lynn.
and yeah. All right. So, thank you, Brian. I'm going to ask you to turn your camera off, and then we'll talk to you later. I'll bring everybody back on, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I think next is Lainey.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome on screen Laurie Gilmore. Yeah, I can't see everybody, so I hope that you're not finding any issue with it. And so, welcome. We're so excited to have you. This is a big treat for all of us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat more with you. So I'm going to do an intro and then I'm going to let you take it away. So Laurie Gilmore is a #1 Sunday Times and USA Today bestselling author who writes steamy small town romance. Her Dream Harbor series is filled with quirky townsfolk, cozy settings, and swoon-worthy romance. And the first book in the series, The Pumpkin Spice Café, was featured on Good Morning America and was named the TikTok Shop Book of the Year for 2024. She loves finding books with the perfect balance of sweetness and spice and strives for that in all of her writing. And if you ever wished you lived in Stars Hollow, just finished my rewatch of Gilmore Girls, or that Luke and Lorelai would just get together already, then these books are perfect for you. They're definitely for you. And I've seen this whole series, but especially the Pumpkin Spice Cafe everywhere online. And I just feel like everywhere I turn, I just see people loving it so much. It's like a delicious bite. And I think all of these books I look forward to just diving in and cozying up. Cozying is the perfect word. And so we're here to talk about the Strawberry Patch Pancake House, which is the newest one. It comes out in March on the 18th. And so we're here to talk about the next installment in the Dream Harbor series. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is the 4th book in the Dream Harbor series. We're moving a little bit out of fall and Christmassy cozy time, which is kind of what the first 3 books have been. So it's springtime in Dream Harbor in this book. Each book in the series focuses on a different couple in the town, so they can be read as standalones. So this one focuses on Archer, who is a chef, and he gets kind of called to Dream Harbor to take care of a daughter that he didn't know he had. And she is 5 years old now, and Iris ends up becoming his live-in nanny. So for romance people out there, it's definitely got grumpy sunshine vibes. It's lots of forced proximity with the whole living in the same house situation. It's a little bit forbidden since she's the nanny and he's her boss. Um, yeah, all the characters from the previous books make appearances, so people get to see all their favorite townsfolk come back. Yeah, I mean, I basically wrote this book. I mean, I chose to have a chef in this one because I was watching a lot of The Bear on Hulu, and I was really loving Carmy, but that show like raises my blood pressure. So this is kind of like what I want for Carmy, just like to chill out and have a happy ending. So this is like my Bear fanfic essentially. But yes, his family is significantly less toxic than Carmy's family. So yeah, so I don't know, it just continues the series. It's the same town. Yeah, springtime in Dream Harbor.
I love it. I also love that, like, taking care of this kid, and he's always like, I'm a chef, I'm a world-renowned chef, and this should not throw me off kilter that this young kid is. That definitely I got the bear. I've missed the bear, and I felt like, yeah, it was a cozy version.
Just like a cozy bear.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And just before we bring everybody back on, I wanted to kind of address, because if people will look at the bottom of your screen, your name is not Laurie Gilmore there. And so you also write under another name, Laurie Gilmore's, and I wanted to make sure to point out that your thank you, Grace, Romantasy trilogy starting with the Curse of Blood and Wolves that came out in September of this year is also written under your name. So the second installment is coming in fall of 2025. And I just wanted people to connect that in their brain because it's, you know, a well-known secret. It's not a secret, but I want people to connect it if they didn't know already. And they can go to your website, which is really wonderful. It's the lauriegilmore.com, and you can see like all of the books and everything you've written, including both, you know, both of these series. But I don't know if you want to quickly just talk about writing under two names and writing something, you know, they're very different than your Dream Harbor series.
Yeah. The choice was made really just to separate like the subgenres. So Laurie's my cozy name, and I use my real name, Melissa McTurnan, for my fantasy kind of paranormal romance. So A Curse of Blood and Wolves is like a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, but with werewolves. So the two names just kind of keep those two worlds separate, and just so readers kind of know what they're getting into. I mean, the covers make it pretty clear, but just to kind of keep that separate.
No, definitely. And now everybody in the chat is like, okay, so now I have even more to go read. So that's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna bring everybody else back on.
Everybody, turn your cameras on. This is great. This is wonderful. This is exactly what we want to hear from everybody. And we have some questions coming in. So we'll get to those. And I think Lainey and Grace and I have our own questions. But I have a question for Lynn from Sylvia Bonani. And she says, having loved Flight, I am curious if Lynn Steger Strong remembers when the family trope became a clear necessity in her writing.
Oh, I think so, Sylvia. I think I just got addicted. I mean, I'm addicted. I think, you know, the thing about families is that to me, there are few spaces that are as high stakes, I guess, both in terms of how much we want to do it well, how much we want to love well, and how hard it is to see through all the versions of ourselves that kind of follow us as we interact with family, right? So another way to say that is that it is still very, very hard to me at 41 to not feel 15 and petulant when I walk into my parents' house. And I find that to be just sort of endlessly fascinating. And I guess with regard to Flight, you know, I finished Flight when we were in Florida. And the thing that happened to me where we were in Florida and I was like, oh, I didn't go hard enough. Which is to say, I think the people in this book maybe are further apart, and it's harder for them to come back together, which again I think is connected to the deep complexity of my feelings about Florida. And I think being in Florida reminded me that the word home is even more complicated than I thought it was.
That's good. That was actually one of my questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much answered it. But I mean, Flight was published in 2022. It had huge reviews and was compared to Ann Tyler and Jonathan Franzen and Patchett. And the flow test explores similar terrain about family. And I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about how they're kind of the same, but then how this book is way different.
Yeah, I think another thing, so a good friend of mine, I write a good amount of criticism, and a good friend of mine who's a critic, she said all criticism is crypto autobiography. And I think another way to think about that is that I think all gossip is just us telling on ourselves, right? Like I think most of the time if I'm saying like, oh, that mom at the playground, what I'm actually saying is like, please think I'm a good mom, right? And so I think, you know, formally the thing that felt really fun to me about this book, and I'll also just say like I've never had so much fun writing this book, right? So there were two things that I knew had to happen. First, there was a gun, which as a literary fiction novelist is not necessarily something that I've ever, others are better at this, but I was terrified, which as a writer, I think is a good sign. You should be scared, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to give somebody a gun and I know the rule, it's going to have to go off. And that was like a fun game to play. And then also this idea of the narrator, right? Because I'm sort of back to this idea of gossip and crypto autobiography. I'm a sister. I'm sister number two, and I have a big sister and a little sister, and I love them both a whole lot, but it's not been easy. Um, and nobody can make you see all your flaws, at least in my experience, as well as your sister. And so I was interested in the idea of one sister telling the story of another sister, moving through everything that she knows, right? Which is the best gossip, right? Like your sister has the best gossip, moving through it all and then still landing in a place. The one other thing that connects it to Flight is my mother-in-law read Flight, and there were parts that maybe were a little bit recognizable and I was nervous. And she called me and she said, no, but it's about love. And it gave me like a lot of courage as a writer because I was like, okay, I can go deep and hard on these people. I can show their flaws. I can let them sort of see one another in their worst possible ways as long as I continually return to the idea that it's about love.
Hmm.
And so I opened with the idea that nobody can be as hard on you as your sister, but also when you get your sister to say something nice to you, there are few things as magic feeling as that because she means it, you know? And it's hard earned and she knows all the gross, icky stuff. So the gun and the sister felt super dangerous and that felt exciting.
I love that.
I think that's a title. The gun and the sister are both dangerous. Got
Yeah.
something. You got to make something with that.
Well,
So true.
for most of the book, actually, the title was "Mother is a Gun" because moms are pretty scary too, and it's the mom's gun. So yeah,
So
Yeah.
good.
Well, since you did the book with a different title, maybe just make it a bumper sticker.
yeah. It's a rough time for bumper stickers, I think, Lynn.
True. True that. All right.
Fair.
Can we have
Yeah.
I have
Grace?
I have a question for Allison. We live in I feel like one of the most prominent times for conspiracies and groupthink, and I don't know, I mean, you could attribute that to a lot of things, the internet, whatever. But I wanted to know if there was one conspiracy or one thing in particular that inspired you to write a book with that basis for We Are Watching.
Well, I started a version of We Are Watching like years ago, and the thing that really got me was Pizzagate. The idea. I mean, there were conspiracy theories brewing about Illuminati, celebrities, political figures, all of whom have heavy security, and I just kept thinking of this guy who owns a pizza restaurant, and all of this stuff is swirling, this insane rumor, devastatingly dangerous rumor is swirling, culminating in somebody coming in and trying to locate the hidden children and with guns and everything, and all of this is possible now, and it is largely because of the internet. I mean, I feel like the pandemic was sort of a perfect storm for conspiracy theory. We were all trapped inside, we were all going crazy, and then we could all realize that there were other people thinking the same crazy things we were, and then we could build on each other and just sort of snowball it. There have always been urban legends, there have always been rumors and things that aren't true about people circulating, but the internet has just escalated that. And so the message boards that started both Pizzagate and QAnon, 4chan, those were the things that really sort of inspired me to write the book, because you can start talking about anybody on there, just anybody, and things that already exist can snowball. So that was one inspiration. And the other inspiration was the McMartin preschool story back in the 80s, where this, I was really young back then, but living in California, and, it all went around that these people who owned this preschool were having, satanic rituals and abusing children. And none of it was true, but their names became sort of attached to this, and their lives were destroyed by it. That type of thing, the power of the mob, terrifies me. So I thought, well, I like writing about things that scare me. So that was sort of the inspiration for the book, just that the fear of the mob.
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, this book at this time and the culture is very, I think we're ready for it, and it's a really great read.
I hope so. I hope it's not just like, God, no more.
Oh no, not at all. I think I kind of like, at least I'm somebody that turns to fiction when crazy things are happening. One as escapism, but also to find the connection between right now and, the book. So for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, I have a question from Casey Davis. And she says, looking at my own family's history with art, theater, and music, there's a ton of material to draw from. How did you research for this novel?
Oh, thanks, Katie. It was a lot of research. I read a lot about the time periods that different strands of the story center on, Hollywood in the 1920s, and the type of people that were drawn to work in the film industry at the time. There's a there's actually a famous silent filmmaker that Klaus is a little bit based on, who, like Klaus, just creates a new identity and then shows up in Hollywood to make it. But it required a lot of reading and a lot of digging into these worlds. I've always been drawn to early film, for instance, silent film and 1930s films and stuff like that. So it was already kind of primed a little bit, but I did have to really hit the books. And I think a lot of us are drawn to 1980s New York, right? There's this kind of romantic sheen that covers this time period when things were really rather edgy and dangerous. So that too I was primed for, but I had to really dig into a lot of biographies of artists through the time. A lot of because Dai is a female artist in the 1980s. I mean, you can count the super successful female artists from the 1980s on your hand, because it was such a misogynist culture. The art scene was so centered on these genius, in quotation mark, male artists, that a lot of the research to understand her world was challenging to really dig in and find those artists that had been kind of forgotten. And then, of course, the people like Cindy Sherman or Barbara Kruger, who did come through the 80s and make it. But it was a lot of hitting the books. And some of it was fun because it was like watching old movies, or watching Basquiat or Smithereens, over and over again to get a hold of early 80s New York culture. Yeah. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I can say that. I love doing that kind of research. I love learning about history and how things interconnect and what the narrative is that leads us from like one cultural object to another, and who the people are that were, in it kind of behind the scenes, especially. That's always interested me. So.
Yeah. Actually, so Casey, who asked the question, commented while you were talking and said, my paternal grandmother, a trained classical pianist, played during the silent films.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. So
That's
Ooh,
awesome.
you never know. Yeah,
Yeah, it
there's a
was a
lot
real
of
job for a
research.
while. That was a way to make a living if you were a musician, to work at the local movie theater. And when sound came in, all those people were just out of a job. And, what do they do next? There's only so
Yeah,
many positions for somebody of that stature. So,
yeah, it's really interesting. So Melissa, I want to talk about tropes. Do you have, I'm always intrigued to hear people's favorite romantic tropes because I think it says a lot about people. But mine's forced proximity, which I don't know what that says. Write in the comments if you think that says something about me. Maybe no, maybe don't actually. But do you have a favorite trope? Do you have one that you like find yourself going towards, or maybe even like not going towards as much? Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yes, I love a grumpy sunshine. I feel like someone should always be grumpy and someone should always be sunshiny. I like just the opposites attract in general for sure. I also love forced proximity. They should be together at all times. He should fall first. I
Nice.
like that. He should be pretty obsessed with her from the jump. Um, yeah. I like to read enemies to lovers, but I don't typically write it, mostly because I don't, and my heroes end up gentle typically. I don't know, they don't make very good enemies usually. Um, yeah, those are my faves, I
I
would
love
say.
it. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Um, this is fun. We're all over the joint. This is great. I didn't realize my audio was off before my mic was off, Brian, but yes, that was exactly what your answer was. Wonderful. And also I wanted to say that I had gone to years ago, went to see the Charlie Chaplin film City Lights, and they had, somebody playing the music, and it was just like, you know, it was kind of, you know, just really enlightening, really, how it had been then. And this was a real treat to see, to bring that back. So I love that that you loved all the deep dive research that you had to do for the book, because it sounds a bit like homework, but on the other hand, it sounds like fun homework.
yeah, definitely
Um,
fun. Yeah.
yeah. This one is from Jennifer Winbury. And she says, I love the contrast between want, this is for Lynn. I love the contrast between want, which focused on one woman, contrasted with the siblings in flight and the float test. What challenges did you encounter exploring each character from their point of view, as well as through the lenses of the other siblings? Jennifer, you took my question, but I'm so glad you did. Okay, so there you go, Lynn. Did you get it?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Jennifer. Again, I think I described this book to a friend when it was just an idea, and she was like, "So Wanton Flight had a baby," and I was like,
Oh,
"Well, maybe," which is to say, I think this is a first person narrative. So Want's first person, which I really loved writing in. I like writing nonfiction, and I like the way that it establishes a kind of intimacy. Like when I say to students, sort of one of the thrills of fiction writing can be it feels like secret sharing. And so I love that feeling of someone sitting really close to you and it's a little bit sweaty and maybe they're telling you more than is comfortable. Like that's one of my favorite ways for a book to feel. And I had so much fun constructing Flight and kind of thinking about each character. And I guess this was my attempt to kind of have my cake and eat it too, which is to say, there's something about the energy of the first person, but Flight really taught me how invested I am in the organism of the collective and even like people's willingness and ability to imagine their way into other people and see things from different points of view and people's willingness and ability to surprise one another. So again, I think this is kind of always like this, which is to say, you learn a lot from each book and hopefully they kind of bridge you into the next. And then maybe as you get a little bit older, you also just get to start to think about, well, what do I like to do? And I think with this book, I really love the first person, but I also love a big cast. And so I was trying to think about, and I really love the idea of family members. Like I think with Want, she was a little angrier than I am these days. Um, and And I love the idea of like the particular generosity of trying to imagine into other people, right? So flight, that hopefully that generosity was the writer imagining, but that generosity is built into the project of the novel. Like this is a little sister trying to imagine. I mean, there are moments where she's imagining her sister's interiority and her sister's sex life, which I hope everybody's okay with. You know, she's sort of saying she's imagining into what her sister's life is. Um, and that also feels like kind of my argument for the value of books, right? Is that like this is our opportunity to imagine our way into
Mhm.
other people, and it's important, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. When we were before we went live at 7 o'clock, we were talking, the authors, all of us were talking amongst ourselves, and Brian mentioned that he is teaching Lynn Steger Strong's book Flight in his undergrad novel workshop, which is so random and cool. Did you want to say anything about that, Brian?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my students love flight. I'll say that. I teach at the College of William and Mary, and this is an undergrad novel workshop. So they usually read like the first 100 pages or so of a handful of novels just to get a sense of like, okay, here's what's established. How different styles and genres like get their story off the ground. Um, and Flight was one of those books this semester. They loved reading the first half of it. I gave them the opportunity, what do we want to read for kind of our second to last week before a kind of a final workshop, and they all wanted to read the rest of Flight, and so we're reading the rest of Flight for next week. I'm pretty excited about it. But yeah, they love it. They love the balance of the multiple characters, the way we follow all these points of view as this family kind of negotiates itself, right? As various members like negotiate one another's situations and family legacy and everything. They were really into it. So it's a great
That's
book.
great.
I just want to
Kismet.
I'm so moved by that, especially by the idea of you young. Anyways, thank you, Brian. That's so, I mean, I feel like I should also remind, I love Brian's book so much. And this is just like, it's a nice, anyways, it's an extra compliment because I think actually this is something Brian does so well in his book, which is navigate on a scope that feels completely overwhelming to me. So many moving parts in such a graceful and moving way. So,
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
it's great. This is so fun to have this kind of conversation. And as I was saying before we went on live, we were talking, just kind of, just talking amongst ourselves. And I was saying to Allison how hard it is to talk to an author of a mystery, of a book where there's a big twist, even, let's say. But mysteries are tough. I was, recalling a time that I had spoken with Laura Lippman and interviewed her about one of her books, and I just felt very tongue-tied after a while because I was so afraid to say something I couldn't say. But Allison, do you feel like you have that experience, with your books?
It's so hard to summarize a mystery without spoiling it. Especially there's a big dramatic twisty event in my first chapter, at the end of my first chapter. And so far, I think all the trade reviews, which have been really good, have all spoiled that first chapter. But what else are you going to do? Yeah, that's my least favorite thing to do, is sort of summarizing a book. I'd love for readers to just be surprised by it and, not see anything coming. Yeah, and Laura Lippman's one of my favorite authors and a great friend. And her next book is kind of a cozy, which is sort of a switch up for her. It's talk about it. I'm not going to spoil it at all, but it's a great book.
Everyone dies at the end.
Like the coziest death, though. It's but yeah, it is.
I'm kidding.
I do
No.
think it's funny though when we're doing like buzzes or we're doing presentations, if there's a mystery that we're presenting that like page one someone dies, if I say like, oh, and then the husband dies, I can hear the room go, oh, I'm like, no, page 1. You're
Mm.
I
good.
did that
You're
to you a
good.
few weeks ago. I was like, you
Yeah,
just
you
spoiled
did.
that. You're like, Grace, it's like 2 pages in. I'm like, okay, never mind. I was like, lady, what the
That much of
heck?
a spoiler. There's a lot more things that happen, after that, but still, yeah. It's really, really difficult. You just want to say like, let me just tell you what I ate for lunch instead.
Exactly. And,
Spoiler
I
alert.
just, I really feel like having you all on, just to talk we've said this too, that a lot of what happens on when we do these virtual programs for libraries, we're doing them early, when I say early, I mean, months and months before the book is coming out. And so often authors have told us over and over again, I haven't talked about my book yet. Like this is the first time. And that's completely understandable. But what's cool about that, I think, is that it's kind of like a therapy session. What's supposed to come out comes out. And it's great, because it's really what you want folks to know without, again, like saying too much. But it's I think it's entirely obviously possible to do because you just get the feeling like, why did you write the book? Or 7 minutes away from tying it up, and there's still questions like Lynn. Florida is a character in your book. What's that all about? And your I don't know, I don't want to say love-hate connection with Florida, but you've got that thing. It's like, and it's really cool, and you can feel it in the book, and it's got a history. You have a history behind it. There's just so much to talk about with every book that doesn't have to spoil anything. But I think that with just a few minutes left, I think that you've all said just enough to make your books very very, just very enticing. But with not a ton of time left, is there anything that anybody, Brian, Melissa, Lynn, Alison, is there anything that you want to say that you haven't touched on? Are you good? Because the last thing is the last thing we want to do is like hang up and be like, I wish I wanted to say this, that, the other thing. Because now's the time to do it. And it's all very, as you can see, very flexible and easy. But if there's anything that you want to say that you haven't, please feel free.
I just want to make a plug for Enemies to Lovers because my daughter, my 12-year-old, writes some actually stunning fan fiction, and she's convinced me, Melissa, if you ever wanted to try it, she's convinced me that it is. I'm gonna mess things up, but canon, it's the best. Anyways, I've been told.
And
I know
I'm
it's
grateful for that.
yeah, especially in fantasy. I know it's like everyone loves enemies to lovers. And I will say, I just started writing the 5th book in the Dream Harbor one, and they don't like each other. So that's like it's close. Like they're not trying to kill each other, but they have a strong dislike. So it's like I'm getting a little closer. So
I'm
we'll
very
see.
excited.
We'll see if I can pull it off. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have one question in the chat for Allison. Jennifer Winberry wants to know, are you ever surprised by your own plot twist while you're writing or wonder where it came from?
Yes. A lot of my plot twists tend to be a little kind of psychotic, and they do sort of creep up on me. The great thing, I mean, the way I write is I write a first draft that's pretty horrible, and then I do so much rewriting and crafting, that it hopefully looks like, oh, this just came out of me. So I'll be walking around and I'll think to myself, oh God, what if that were, just think outside the box. What if that were to happen? What if, and yes, I've been very surprised. And then I have to go back and seed it through as if that was what I was thinking all along. But to me, that's one of the most fun things about writing this specific genre of suspense is you can scare yourself and surprise yourself. And I actually think that's sort of why I started writing in the first place, was to sort of scare myself. So yes.
Love that. So we have just a few minutes left, and unless I'm wrong, I think we've gotten to the questions. I'm looking on Facebook and our Crowdcast. I think we're good. Yeah.
Yep, I think we got to them all.
All right. So with that, okay. just do a round robin and if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But we were wondering if there's anything that you're reading now that you love, or if you've already read it, but you just love it so much and you say, you know what, if you want to really read a really good book, this is one for you. Want to
Um,
play that game?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend William Boyle's Saint of the Narrow Street, and it comes out in February. He's a tremendous writer. He writes crime, and I hate the expression transcends the genre because, you know, the genre is fine. Why do you want to transcend it? But it really does. I read it a couple of weeks ago. It's out early February, I think, from Soho Press, and I still can't stop thinking about it. It's just a wonderful story of family. It takes place in Brooklyn, and it's like watching an entire season of The Sopranos, but with people who want crime.
So before we go to the next person, Grace, last time we did this, you wrote the names
it.
of all.
I got it.
Yeah,
Because if people don't, I'll take it if other people don't want the list, but I always, as if I need more to read. But you guys recommend some good books, so I'm writing them down and I'll send it to our audience after.
Okay. And Lynn, we know you have a hard stop at 8, so you want to go next?
Sure, I'm teaching a class on friendship right now, which has been a whole lot of fun. And I was trying to think of the stars of the show, and I feel like probably a lot of people have read this, but Laurie Morris, Who Will Run the Frog Hospital, which we read the day after the election, it made us all feel better. And this book by Helen Garner, who I feel like is having a moment. Maybe everything by Helen Garner is brilliant, but we're reading The Spare Room, and maybe also something that maybe people haven't heard of is Dag Solstad. He's Norwegian, and he wrote a book called Shyness and Dignity, and it's sort of Thomas Bernhard, but maybe slightly more palatable if that sells to a certain group. um, I've also maybe one more is we read Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety, which I've now assigned to my husband, and it's a wonderful book on marriage, and so it's actually just been really fun to talk to my husband about it as he reads it. So those are I'll stop now. But those have been some bright spots. Oh, Virginia,
I'm reading a book called The Wolf King, a fantasy romance by, I don't know if I can say her last name, but it's Lauren Paffreman. Maybe. I don't know. But it's werewolf. It's Scottish werewolves. A Scottish alpha werewolf steals a princess. And it's great. Highly, highly recommend for the enemies to lovers crew. It's very nice. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm like halfway through. It's great. I'm just eating it up like candy right now. So
I just finished James by Percival Everett a couple weeks ago, and it was so incredible. Like better than I think I'd seen all these rave reviews, and it's like even better than what I'd imagined it was going to be. It's so good. I'm not even a fan of Mark Twain or anything, so it kind of was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to want to, read, this, kind of remake of a character from Twain or anything. But it's so incredibly good. I'm in the middle of reading a Don DeLillo book called Zero K. I love DeLillo, and I'm loving this book. It's one that I hadn't gotten around to. And I will say, just as a crazy note to end on for me, I learned that it is Don DeLillo's birthday about 20 minutes before we started today. And that only is of importance because today's also my birthday.
What?
And it is, yeah,
Happy
it is
birthday.
wild. Thank you. Thanks. It is wild to learn that like one of my literary heroes also shares my birthday. Just like an hour and a half ago. So,
Well,
yeah, the little is always good.
for spending it with us. That's so sweet.
Oh, of course, yeah. Who better?
Who better than librarians?
Hold on. Can I use my little reaction? There we go. Woohoo! It's a little.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yay! Happy birthday.
Yay! Oh my God, that's so awesome. Well, thank you all so much it's 8:02 and I think we hit it. I think we're good. And so let's see. I think that's it. Hang on one second here. Lynn, thank you so much. I don't know if Lynn popped off because I had to switch to a different screen. But if you are still here, thanks. If you're not still here, thanks. I think she had to leave.
Yeah, she had to jump. I told her it's all good. So she said
Okay,
goodbye, and it was lovely.
she's great. This is
Putting words in her mouth, but I know she enjoyed it.
I don't think she hated it.
Also, librarians are wishing you a happy birthday, Brian. Just so you
Aw.
know.
Thank you so much.
I love that. I hope you all have enjoyed your time, authors especially, and librarians as well. And we just love spending this hour with you and learning about these books, and hearing straight from the authors themselves, which is truly the best. And we thank you all. Again, we have just a quick wrap up. Grace, if you want to show the jackets again, so that we can. So we've got the float test by Lynn Steger Strong, and that goes on sale in April. All of these books are in April. I mean in 2025. The Californians by Brian Castleberry on sale in March. We Are Watching by Alison Gaylin in January. And then Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore, March 2025. So I think got everything in. It's 8:03. We got all the questions answered, and we got all the great points spoken by the authors. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you. It was great meeting you all.
Great to meet everybody.
It was great to meet you all too, and great to see you again, Allison. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Take good care.
And happy birthday.
And happy birthday. Oh.